everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. Some of you may recognize this image. If you don't, this is the third largest urban explosion of all time behind Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. Only this happened in 2020 and it happened in Lebanon. And I realized I came across this compilation on my it was like a recommended video on my home screen, and I was like, oh yeah, this is probably something I should look into and add to the Second Coming timeline, and so I did. Here it is right here. Happened on August 4th. Third most devastating urban explosion of all time after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 218 dead, 6,500 injured, and 300,000 made homeless. All in an instant. Okay, this was a pretty dramatic thing that happened. So before we get into it, let me just give you the update on the Book of Mormon challenge, the Flood the Earth challenge. We're at 6,108 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared. We haven't had any new people join the challenge for a couple days, so please consider if you haven't already. Really easy. Just whip out your phone, go to the Gospel Library app, go to Scriptures, and at the top you'll see a share button to share the Book of Mormon app. And then send it to somebody that is in your contacts list. You know, maybe an acquaintance, maybe somebody that you just did something with on Craigslist or, you know, Facebook Marketplace. You just bought something or sold something and you have their number. Just send it. Send it to people. It's easy. Let's flood the earth. But we have had 5 new copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared since last time that I updated this. 55 reports of people meeting with the missionaries and 19 people that have been baptized. So keep up the good work, everybody. So let me just show you the rest of the pictures or the screenshots that I took. You can see it's pretty dramatic. It left a blood red cloud, not so much a mushroom cloud. It wasn't a nuclear explosion, but a pretty ominous, terrifying blood red cloud in the sky. And these white clouds that you see right here, this is like the compression wave. That if this was a video right here, if I push play, this white wave would just fill up the whole screen very quickly, by the way. Have a few different angles of it. Here you can see the compression wave growing, and as well as the red cloud. Okay, oh my god. Oh my gosh. And by the way, I don't blame anybody that was there at the time that was sitting here recording this. But, you know, after watching this, I realize if you're seeing something pretty dramatic, like, okay, they didn't have time. As soon, this right here showed up in like a second, what you're seeing on the screen right here. Before this, it was just like a big fire, lots of smoke in the sky. But if you see something dangerous looking, maybe don't take the time to sit there and film it, or just make sure you're a really good distance away. Of course, they probably thought that they were good. There was no way of knowing that this was going to ensue. But man, it was just it's horrifying. This is scary. Here's a look at it from kind of like the port side over here. There's a ship right here, and there's a guy right here, and that guy was screwed. Even being this far away, this was no joke. This was no joke. So I'll put the link for this compilation. I mean, it's almost 3 hours long in the description below. You can also go to my recommended videos playlist. These are a bunch of videos that I would recommend from other YouTube channels. I put the Chelyabinsk meteor compilation here. You should also look at that because that was also really dramatic. But really quick, let's look at the kind of like the context of that year, 2020, in which this happened. I don't need to tell you that 2020 was a really bad year. Let me just go over just kind of like the highlights. So we had the pandemic that reached the United States in January. The UK legalized same-sex marriage that same day. Betelgeuse, the main star, the brightest star of the Orion constellation, and normally the 10th brightest star in the sky, it had been going through this dimming, which started as the pandemic started, and then it ended um, in March, the same month that an earthquake caused the angel Moroni to drop the trumpet from the Salt Lake Temple, which just happened to be the 77th day of the year. 2 days later, missionaries called home. 3 days after that, all temples worldwide closed due to the pandemic. Comet Neowise was discovered, brightest comet since Hale-Bopp in 1997. We had that incredible conference. It was a historic conference, 200 years since the first vision and 400 years since the Mayflower landing. Mega flash world record, longest single horizontal lightning flash ever recorded, 477.2 miles. You had the George Floyd protests that began when he was killed. And in between when they began and when they ended, look at all these things that happened. Lightning world record, another lightning world record, the greatest duration for a single lightning flash, 17 seconds, 17.102 seconds. We also had the largest wildfire in California state history, which was the August Complex Fire. And then right here is where we have the Beirut, Lebanon port explosion, as California is having its largest wildfire in state history. That same month, just 6 days later, the most powerful Midwest derecho, powerful Midwest derecho, costliest thunderstorm disaster in the United States history. And then, on top of that, 3 days later, Colorado had its largest wildfire in state history. And then the George Floyd protest ends. And technically, on the 11th of November, 2020 was when that was the anniversary of the 400 years since the Mayflower landing. Later that month, just 6 days later, most extreme rogue wave ever recorded off the coast of Ucluelet, British Columbia, thought to occur only once every 1,300 years. And then at the end of the year, we had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Closest since 1623, closest visible since 1226. Okay, so, and then to start off the new year in 2021, it started off with the Capitol riots. So, and I'm sure I haven't captured everything. There's probably more I need to add to this. But this is the next entry, the Beirut, Lebanon port explosion. This is really saying something, you guys, when you have the third most destructive, devastating urban explosion after Nagasaki and Hiroshima, which were nuclear bombs. So if there ever was any sort of nuclear explosion, this wasn't nuclear, but it was on that same level. It happened in 2020. Okay, so what in the world? What's going on here? Okay, so where's Lebanon? Just in case you don't know, it's just north of Israel. It's smaller than Israel, and here's Beirut, the capital city, and this is where the port explosion occurred. Okay, so there's Beirut. Beirut, like I just said, is the capital and largest city of Lebanon. As of 2014, Greater Beirut, so like the metro area, has a population of 2.5 million, which makes it the third largest city in the Levant region. And I don't know if you can see that map right there, but basically the Levant, it essentially includes, it's like this area right here mostly: Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Iraq. Okay, so it's the third largest city in this area. Beirut has been inhabited for more than 5,000 years and was one of Phoenicia's most prominent city-states, making it one of the oldest cities in the world. See Beirut. The first historical mention of Beirut is found in the Amarna letters from the New Kingdom of Egypt, which date to 14th century BC. So it's a historic city. It's a city very, very close to Israel. And by the way, there's some hints that it actually could be related to Israel, but I'll leave that to you to decide. Very interesting happening, but it's a large city in that area. Okay, so let's start with this Al Jazeera article. Infographic. How big was the Beirut explosion? So here's the infographic. And it was pretty darn big. You know, look at all these buildings and the city right here. Thankfully, half of it essentially encompassed this part over here, which is, you know, sea. It's the port. It's the open ocean. But actually, probably more than 50% of this circle includes the city. Okay, on August 4th, 2020, a massive explosion in the port of Beirut ripped through Lebanon's capital, killing 218 people, injuring 7,000, and leaving 300,000 displaced. The blast, which is considered one of the biggest non-nuclear explosions, has been recorded, or to have been recorded, damaged 77,000 apartments and caused an estimated 3.8 to 4.6 billion in material damage. These are some interesting numbers too, by the way. Injuring 7,000, 77,000 apartments. It's just interesting. Even 300,000, because I'll leave that alone, but okay. Following the incident, the Lebanese government launched an investigation into the explosion. However, 2 years later, those affected have still not received answers. And there is some weird stuff and some weird circumstances that we're going to go over. But this is still like an ongoing thing even to this day. This still hasn't been resolved like legally, as far as like legal repercussions or anything else. Here's that same thing. Impact of Beirut explosion. Then it has like this slider right here. So here's before, and here's after. Before, after. So you definitely see difference mostly in this port area. Although you can also, well, I don't know if it's just the resolution of the image, but down here seems to change a little bit. But the only thing that I can really say for sure is kind of like this area right here that you can visibly tell that that's definitely been affected. Okay, now this is an interesting, Al Jazeera. You have a section here in this article called "What Caused the Beirut Blast?" Okay, please tell us. A fire at the Beirut port caused a fire. Okay, all right. Okay, a fire at the Beirut port caused the detonation of 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate, which had been improperly stored in a port warehouse for 6 years. Okay. A fire at the Beirut port caused the detonation of ammonium nitrate, which had been improperly stored for 6 years at the port. Okay. The ammonium nitrate, commonly used to make fertilizer and explosives, arrived in Beirut in 2013 on a Moldova flagged ship making its way from Georgia to Mozambique. All right, well, it's kind of weird. Okay, I'm no expert in international trade, so I don't know if that's like, okay, whatever. The Rosas merchant vessel, owned by a Russian businessman, was forced to dock in Beirut after facing technical problems at sea, according to PDF. I'm sure that stands for something other than PDF reader. Lawyers representing the boat's crew. The ship was subsequently impounded by the Lebanese authorities for failing to pay port fees. In 2014, the ship's cargo was eventually unloaded and stored in a warehouse in the port. In the years that followed, a number of safety warnings were sent to multiple high-level officials, but nothing was done. And then it just repeats. What caused the Beirut blast? A fire at the port of Beirut caused the detonation of... Okay, but what caused the fire? What... You didn't explain what happened. All you just said is that, oh, well, there was a fire and this ammonium nitrate was improperly stored, and it came from Georgia. It was going to Mozambique. The vessel was owned by a Russian businessman. Okay, but what caused the fire? That's what I want to know. That's the cause. That's what caused. So okay, all right. Of course, I think this was this is like a new to their credit. No, this is the 4th of August 2022. So 2 years had passed, and that's what they're saying. They're just generically saying that a fire caused it. Well, don't worry, because I have more. So Meir, they have some more details. This article written, the day after, the 5th of August 2020. Okay, this article is called Beirut Blast Blamed on Welder Accidentally Setting 2,750 Tons of Ammonium Nitrate Ablaze. A preliminary investigation revealed Tuesday's blast occurred after a fire was sparked by someone welding a small hole to prevent theft from the warehouse, the Lebanese TV station LBCI reported. Here's the horrifying aftermath right there. A security source told Reuters it was started by welding work being carried out on a hole in the warehouse located in the port of Beirut. Video posted on social media showed slashes and pops as the fire raged just moments before the explosion sent a shockwave through the city on the Mediterranean, leading to speculation the blast occurred at a fireworks storage site. Now, when you watch this video, it's kind of broken into parts. Like, it has this first section here for like just a couple minutes where it shows the first explosion. First, there's the fire, and then the first explosion, which wasn't the ammonium nitrate. But it's pretty clear that there are fireworks going off. You can just visibly see that. Of course, I'm no expert, but it looks like fireworks to me. Okay, so going back to Meir. So Badri Daher, Director General of Lebanese Customs, said it appears fireworks were being stored close to the ammonium nitrate. The explosive material was seized from a ship in 2014. There's all this. And I saw some articles, I'm not sharing them here in this video, but I saw some articles saying that this, the remaining silos right here ended up falling down due to a fire. Okay. Okay, so that's it for this one. Now, Times of Israel. Mystery swirls around what caused ammonium nitrate to explode in Beirut. This was also written on August 5th, 2020, so the day after. Okay, get away. Commercial. What happened today will not pass without accountability, said Diab. Well, that sounds nice. It doesn't sound like that's what actually happened. And then after that, he says, those responsible for this catastrophe will pay the price. I don't know about that. A picture posted online Tuesday of unknown provenance appeared to show workers welding a warehouse door next to stacks of 1.5-ton bags of ammonium nitrate. And here's a picture that was posted on Twitter. This one was by Intel Crab. A lot of people follow that. This guy, he follows just a lot of different things. He's usually a pretty good source for, information. But anyway, so this is the picture. You can kind of like see the windows in the background. You see like the little windows here, and supposedly those match up with these windows. And here are the guys welding. Okay, the door and windows on the warehouse appeared to match pictures and videos of the warehouse where the explosion occurred, shortly after a fire blamed on fireworks sent a large cloud of smoke over Beirut's downtown. At least one worker, clear that. At least one worker in the picture is wearing a cloth face mask, pointing to it having been taken recently. Maybe because of the pandemic and wearing face masks, I don't know. The authenticity of the picture could not be independently confirmed, and that's kind of key. So supposedly, okay, a spark from a welding tool would not be able to cause the nitrate to explode, but it could ignite other materials and raise temperatures high enough to be able to set off a massive explosion. So this picture is in question. There's no way to really verify it. You know, I don't see either of those guys. Well, maybe that's a mask right there. I can't tell. So there's kind of like this that's been put out there. I don't even see a welder. No one's wearing a welding mask. There's no torch that's like the part of the that you hold where. Anyway, I went to welding school. There's no. I don't see any welding equipment right here. Anyway, so if they're like working right here, where's the other material that would catch on fire? Like what? These bags? They look like they're plastic. I'm not sure. Well, they're probably not plastic because it's pretty heavy, but where's the other material? So that whole thing, I don't know, that kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Later on in the article, it says, it was also a main ingredient in a bomb that destroyed a federal building in Oklahoma City in 1995. And I should probably add that to my timeline too, but I'll do that later. Last year, reports in Israel claimed that the Mossad, that's the Israeli CIA, or it's an intelligence agency of the Israeli government, the Mossad had tipped off European intelligence agencies about the Lebanese terror group Hezbollah storing caches of ammonium nitrate for use in bombs in London, Cyprus, and elsewhere. So, maybe that makes a whole lot more sense. And Cyprus is just right over here, right across the way from Lebanon. Here's Beirut, here's Cyprus. So now you have to kind of wonder about that ammonium nitrate. Was it going to be used for fertilizer, or was it meant for explosives? Was it meant for fertilizer down here in Mozambique, which is down here across from Madagascar? I actually did a video a few months ago about Mozambique because there was a crazy like weather pattern that was playing out. Anyway, I think it was a typhoon. I have to like follow up on that too because I think it was like the longest recorded typhoon, like as far as like its lifespan. I'll have to follow up on that. Okay, so anyway, does that maybe make more sense? And I don't know. I can't claim that that's what's happening, but we know that there was supposedly a Russian businessman involved that owned the boat, in that it was going from Georgia, which borders Russia. Russia's just right there. Going from Georgia. Is there a passage right here? Yeah, there is. So I guess like going from Georgia, sailing this way around here, and then down here, probably wanting to go through the Suez Canal, and then down to Mozambique. So Russian businessman, and we all know that Russia, which in this like axis, or this division of world powers, which side is Russia on compared to Israel? The side against Israel. They're allies with Iran, China, Syria. So, I don't know. Just curious. All right, so let's continue. Just a couple things to think about, but let's continue. in the picture, the name Nitropril HD can be seen on the bags, apparently referring to the name of a Brazilian firm that manufactures explosives for quarrying blasting. So, again, I'm no expert in foreign trade, in international trade. If these are manufactured in Brazil, like what? Was there a company in Georgia that purchased them and they're like, okay, now we're going to resell it to Mozambique, make some money, and then they ship it all the way down to Mozambique? So just this picture is kind of in question, even though the windows match, right? So, but is this what, you know, is this what the bad actors want to put out there to try and cover up what actually happened? Well, bad actors, good actors, I don't know. Somebody who doesn't want it to be known what actually happened. Like, oh look, here's some guys, they're welding. Just a welding accident. I don't know, but that sounds kind of fishy to me. Let's move on. This is from Hindustan Times. The article is called Beirut Blast, Warning of Extreme Danger Ignored by Lebanon Officials About Stored Ammonium Nitrate. Okay, the ammonium nitrate, equivalent to 1,800 tons of TNT, was unloaded from a cargo ship, Rosus, in 2014, according to 2 letters issued by the Director General of Lebanese Customs. For reasons that are unclear, dock workers unloaded the chemical, which can be used to make fertilizers and explosives, and put it into storage. So for reasons that are unclear, because it's not like Hezbollah has power in Lebanon. And again, I'm not an expert. It just seems kind of fishy. I don't know. I'm just a layman. Workers welding a door on Tuesday started a fire that ignited the chemicals, Lebanese broadcaster LBCI said, citing people who attended a Supreme Council of Defense briefing after the blast. Authorities haven't said what triggered the explosion that roared through Beirut, killing at least 100 people and wounding 4,000. Well, this was written the day after, so that's why those numbers are lower than what they ended up being. Okay, so for reasons that are unclear, the dock workers unloaded the chemical. Okay, fine. Okay, here's the next one. This is a study in an article called Beirut Ammonium Nitrate Blast, Analysis, Review, and Recommendations by these people here. These are like, professionals from their... Okay, so you have like people from American University of Beirut, University of Messina, Italy, Massachusetts General Hospital, Boston, Massachusetts, American University Beirut, and Washington, D.C., the Veterans Affairs. I don't know. But you have these different people. Samar Al-Hajj, Hassan Ar-Daini, Stephanie Mondello, Haitham Ka'afarani, Firas Kobeisi, and Ralph G. De Palma. So all of them authored this report. Okay, so I'm just going to read the highlights, of course. It further reviews prior ammonium nitrate incidents and suggests actionable recommendations and strategies to optimize chemical safety measures, improve emergency preparedness, and mitigate the delayed clinical effects of blast and toxic gas exposures. That's another thing to consider. It's like something that I think more and more about as I observe all these different disasters. Like, for example, the East Palestine train derailment. That's something that, to my knowledge, it didn't immediately kill anybody, but obviously the after effects are going to go on for lifetimes, not just days, weeks, but years and decades. So this is another component to think about this disaster. Okay, So in the introduction, it says the latest ammonium nitrate blast in Beirut was categorized as the third most devastating urban explosion of all time after the Hiroshima and Nagasaki nuclear bombings at the end of World War II. That is really saying something. We've never seen anything this powerful as far as like explosions that actually caused damage and killed people since World War II. There have been other explosions. There are, like, for example, there was the Tonga volcano that went off at the beginning of 2022. That was an explosion, but it was a natural explosion. There are nuclear bomb tests that have occurred since World War II, but they were tests. So out of actual blasts that actually cause damage and kill people, this is the third largest. It's the third largest in human history. This isn't even just like modern history. This is the history of humanity, because no one was capable before World War II to create an explosion that big. Or maybe they could with like lots and lots and lots of explosion or like explosive materials. Maybe, I don't know. But you get what I'm saying. The Beirut explosion created a massive blast that produced a 140 meter wide crater and an earthquake of a 3.3 magnitude on a Richter scale. Nearly 220 individuals killing nearly 220 individuals and injuring more than 6,500 instantly, while leaving about 300,000 people homeless. Yeah, this was kind of a big deal. It created a doggone earthquake, essentially. 3.3. Okay, later on, it says here, the destructive ammonium nitrate detonation resulted in an instantaneous massive blast that was heard in Cyprus, 125 miles away in the Mediterranean Sea. Yikes. Let's go back to the map. So, oh yeah, I can draw on here. I was like, it'd be nice to draw on here. So, you'll have to tell me if you know, but, okay, so here's the site of the explosion. Here's Cyprus, right here. And so, it was heard that far away. Now, I don't know, this is what I was saying, what I was trying to ask you. I don't know if sound carries differently over land. I would assume that it would, because of natural obstacles like mountains and forests and trees, plant life, whatever, as well as man-made structures. So I don't know if sound carries further over the ocean or over water. But if it does carry the same distance over land as it does over water, then we're looking at like a circle that looks something like this. I'm going to try and do my best. It's not perfect, but I can only assume, and I haven't seen anything to say this, but I can only assume that they heard it throughout the entire country. If this is right, the entire country of Lebanon, probably some of Syria, including Damascus, and then at least part of northern Israel, maybe some of Jordan. That's something that I would like to know. But at the very least, we know that from here to here, it was definitely heard that far. Okay, so that's kind of crazy. Let's get back to the report. The produced pressure was equivalent to, so it didn't cause an earthquake, but it was equivalent to a 3.3 magnitude on a Richter scale, accompanied by a seismic heat. By what? A seismic heat and a shockwave that traveled at supersonic speed, demolishing most of the urban neighborhood around the port and shattering windows as far as 10 kilometers across the Beirut metropolis. Holy cow. So if you were 10 kilometers, within 10 kilometers of the blast, your windows were likely shattered. That is just, it's horrifying. Okay, injury characteristics. Almost all Port of Beirut employees, along with the deployed firefighters, and it shows video of them, by the way, in this compilation video that I'm recommending, at the blast scene died instantly due to their severe injuries. That's really sad. Beirut residents suffered from multiple mechanisms of injuries within a radius of 6 miles from the epicenter, and were affected by a mushroom-like cloud of ammonium nitrate. Upon the detonation of Beirut explosive, the initial blast wave produced a millisecond long supersonic positive pressure gradient wave, subsequent to a lengthier negative pressure that expanded outwardly from the blast epicenter across Beirut residential areas. Thousands of Beirut disaster victims presented to local hospitals for injury acute management. These victims experienced various mechanisms of blast injuries caused by the explosion pressure and heat wave. The reported injuries align with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention classification of blast injury, and were classified into, and I'll just give you the classifications. I'm not going to read the descriptions because it's not good, but if you want to, I'll leave this report, the link for it, in the description below. But it has these different classifications: primary injury or barotrauma, secondary injury, tertiary injury, quaternary injury. Okay, and then it talks a little bit more about the toxicity of the incident. So look at this. The Beirut blast disaster produced enormous white and dark brown plumes covering a large portion of the city. Again, how big is the city? Well, the metro area is 2.5 million. 2.5 million. Okay, later on, the most hazardous NOx are nitric oxide and nitrogen dioxide. Only 1 or 2 breaths of the NOx stream can cause severe toxicity. There was a time, you guys, this was shortly after my mission. I was going into one of the career paths that I was exploring was non-destructive testing, or NDT, and that's where you essentially, using various methods, you test, for example, like a welding job to see if there's any porosity in the weld, which means like little air bubbles or inclusions, or you check like a mechanical part for cracks or something like that. And I started working for a guy, and it was kind of like a mom and pop shop for NDT, and it was really irregular hours. But one of the places that they would send you out to would be these oil refineries, like up near Salt Lake, and they would have planned closures in order to, I guess, do like maintenance and do checks, and for us to go up there and check different things. And I kind of got scared because they talked about some chemicals there that if you breathe it in just like once, you're dead. And I was just like, nope. Okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm glad that there's people that do, but I wasn't about to do that. But anyway, in this case, these people didn't have a choice. Just one day, their world was turned upside down. Nitrogen dioxide is heavier than air, hence exposure can result in asphyxiation. Great. Later on, the Beirut explosion also produced large amounts of particulate matter that remained suspended in air for days. This effect has probably impacted more people than any other blast pollutant. Emitted particulate matter may consist of sulfates, nitrates, ammonia, sodium chloride, black carbon, and mineral dust. Yeah, does that sound good to have all that stuff in the air over your city for a few days? The long-term environmental repercussions of the Beirut explosion remain unexplored. The impact of the ammonium nitrate explosion, mushroom cloud smoke, rain, rain precipitation 5 days following the blast, and the fire water drainage requires study. In the current case of the Beirut explosion, chemical release was quite rapid. The resulting toxic plumes were dispersed within 24 hours and scattered into the atmosphere to below detectable limits. Given the prevailing wind direction in Lebanon, most of the affected areas were located toward the northeast, downwind of ground zero. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so here's the explosion. Here's where it was. So northeast, and I don't know exactly the angle, but just generally speaking, northeast. It looks like there's a bunch of other populated areas along the coast here. There's a bunch of like city names. Let's take a look at the satellite. And yeah, there's a lot of people living up here. So, okay. Going back here. In addition, toxic dust was deposited on surfaces and settled on the ground in areas downwind of the port and may have resuspended in the air with activities during the recovery operations. On the other hand, the observed rainfall on day 5 following the blast may have driven resuspended particles to run off into water supply systems and may have dispersed in soil. The impact on drinking water quality and potentially affected soils requires further investigation. Well, would that make you feel comfortable if you were living there and your kids are drinking from like the school water fountain? At the time, environmental and health concerns continue over chemical substances stored at the damaged port warehouses, including 9.5 tons of Class 1 insecticides, which disappeared completely after the blast, along with small amounts of picric acid and methanol, according to the International Environmental Emergency Coordination Cell. In addition, during additional preliminary site surveys conducted 1 week after the blast, the following substances were found at various warehouses at Port of Beirut: petroleum oils, calcium hypochlorite, benzoyl peroxide, hydrofluoric acids, in addition to other potential hazardous materials, some with insufficient labeling or are unreachable due to building conditions. So what I take from this is not only do you have the ammonium nitrate and that stuff going up into the air, but everything else that was stored in this area, like all these different buildings and stuff that were blown away, that stuff probably already also got scattered all over the place. I mean, look at this. Look at it. It's just like like exploding outward. So that is a really nasty chemical cocktail, essentially, in this disaster. That's a really bad situation. If I lived in Beirut, I don't know, because things are always like different in reality when you're actually there. But me, hypothetically speaking, I don't know how many of these people are thinking about these things. I'm sure they've talked about it in the local news, but I'm not so sure I would feel safe living in Beirut anymore. I'd probably, take off for somewhere else. Maybe I'd move up to Tripoli. Maybe I'd move down to Ja'uharia or someplace like that. Okay, continuing on. The Beirut explosion was caused by about 2.75 kiloton of nitropryl, trademarked, stored in FIBC bags. Based on the manufacturer's technical data sheet, the product is classified as security sensitive material. Why? Because it can be used for explosives. Consisting of a low density porous white to off-white prilled grade of ammonium nitrate, NH4NO3 ammonium nitrate, composed of 99% ammonium nitrate with a total nitrogen mass of 34%. It is, okay, now look at this. Look at this. It is specifically designed to be used as an oxidizer in blasting agents. So, I don't know. The way that I'm reading this report and what they just said is that what was there? The nitropryl, trademarked. Nitropryl is specifically designed to be used as an oxidizer in blasting agents. So I don't think that it was meant to become fertilizer. And I don't know how much need Mozambique has for explosives, except for like maybe for mining. Maybe there's mining that goes on in Mozambique. I'm sure there's mining that goes on in every country of the world to one extent or another. So, is that what they needed down there in Mozambique? Let's take a look. Mozambique mining. Mozambique has commercially important deposits of coal, high quality coking coal and thermal coal, graphite, iron ore, titanium, apatite, marble, bentonite, bauxite, and a bunch of other things. So I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert on mining. I don't know if like all types of mining use explosives. They probably do. There's a salt mine that up here in Kansas. And we've gone there 2 years in a row. It's an underground salt mine. It's like 600 feet under the ground. They store, so they mine salt there. But you know what? I'm going to show you some pictures. So yeah, it's in Hutchinson, Kansas, which is west of Wichita. And there's this really cool underground salt mine that you can visit. It's called Stratica. And they have a portion of it that's basically this kind of visitor touristy museum type thing. But it is an active salt mine, and they also use it for storage of props and other things like film. Like for example, they have like the Agent Smith, one of the Agent Smith mannequin things for the movie Matrix Revolutions. They have that there and other props that are on display, as well as you can see up here these containers for film. In fact, over here they have some like exposed that's out for looks, so you can see like what's in the boxes. And I want to go to the, how do you go to the whatever. Anyway, you have a bunch of things here. They had all these boxes. And in this, I think they actually did have actual film. And this is for Friends, the TV show, Warner Brothers. So anyway, but they talked about all, when they take you on the tour and stuff, about all the explosives that they used for the mining. So if they use mining for salt, I don't know. I would assume they probably use it for just all different types of mining. But anyway, so specifically designed to be used as an oxidizer in blasting agents. That's what was in Beirut. Okay, continuing. According to its material safety data sheet, MSDS, nitropryl storage requirements include that it be kept dry, away from an ignition or heat source, and mainly stored in areas that are well ventilated. The absence of proper storage conditions, coupled with a lengthy storage time since 2013 in Hangar 12 of the Beirut port exacerbated the conditions of storage of nitropryl bags. The manufacturer warns users that an adjacent detonation, so in this case the fireworks, or a major fire involves risk of explosion. Confinement of material can also result in detonation according to the product without MSDS. Additional dynamics of the Beirut explosion remain uncertain so far. The investigation, however, shows that one or more of these scenarios is likely to have occurred in the context of this explosion. Moreover, in the case of fire, it is recommended by the manufacturer to first open up the storage area to provide maximum ventilation, and secondly, to evacuate all personnel to a minimum of 1,000 meters away from the site to save first responders and prevent death. So what I'm wondering, and I don't know, just something to think about. I'm wondering if it was stored in such poor conditions because it was meant to be kept hidden. It wasn't exactly legitimate. You get what I'm saying? You want to like hide it among other things and just make it look normal for those that don't really know what they're looking at or whatever. There could be other things too. They have a table here where they have reviewing existing literature. We have identified top ammonium nitrate explosions in each country and compared them to other ammonium nitrate incidents. Since 1916, more than 30 ammonium nitrate tragic events occurred worldwide at industrial sites or during transportation. We've selected the top ammonium nitrate explosions in each of these countries in terms of its weight and resulting fatalities. And so they have a table here that you can look at, and the Beirut explosion exceeds them all by far and away. Well, I guess it's kind of comparable to the Texas City, USA explosion. The setting, it was a ship. The year was 1947. That one had more fatalities, 581, and then 5,000 injuries. So that was pretty bad. In terms of fatalities, I guess the next one would be 1921, Oppau, Germany. And this was an ammonium nitrate based factory. So here's just kind of like a comparison, but this explosion definitely is on the top. And it looks like they're sorting it based on tons. So the Texas City was 2,086, but the Lebanon incident was 2,750. So, but you can see there's not like a whole lot really in recent memory, except for 2015, Tianjin, China. That was also a port, but it was only 800 tons and 165 dead, 798 injured. So anyway, there's just kind of like a comparison. And I don't think I have anything else from this report, but you can check that out. Okay, now what's happening as of right now, today, with this thing? Investigation into Beirut's massive 2020 port blast resumes. This was written in January of this year, 2023. Just want to read a few things here. The judicial officials said Bitar decided to release, that's a judge, decided to release 5 people who had been detained for more than 2 years. They include former customs chief Shafiq Meri, Sami Hussein, the head of ports operations at the time of the blast, and a Syrian worker. 12 people will remain in custody, including the head of the port authority and the head of the Lebanese customs at the time of the blast. The officials said Bitar is expected to charge 8 people, including top intelligence officials, Major General Abbas Ibrahim and Major General Tony Saliba. Now, why? Why would he be charging these intelligence officers in the military. Well, I'm assuming that they're in the military, because you have like ranks like that in sometimes in intelligence agencies, like commander or whatever. I think. So why would you be charging these intelligence officials? Like, what do they have to do with an accident at a port? What what they deal with is national security, right? Like, is the military supposed to have a say in this? I don't know, maybe. In the United States, we have the Coast Guard, and they oversee. Well, I know they have a hand in like exports and imports. Like when I was in Afghanistan, in Bagram Airfield, to my surprise, there were Coast Guard personnel there. And I was like, what the heck is the Coast Guard doing in Afghanistan? And come to find out, it's because they have to do with things that are being imported into the United States or shipped to the United States. In fact, I think they're the ones that they they check all the gear that we're bringing to Afghanistan and from Afghanistan. Which was a little bit upsetting because we had some locks on these different containers and they like broke the locks, and I didn't know that they were going to do that. Other people didn't know, so we had to replace some locks. But anyway, but that's the Coast Guard. Now, I don't know how things work in Lebanon. I don't know if their intelligence community is in charge of imports and exports, but I kind of doubt it. I don't know. But that's something that kind of stands out, that this judge is charging these two, because could it be more likely that they're working with Hezbollah, maybe Iran, maybe Russia, maybe just whoever these people are that do these things? Bitar previously charged 3 ex-ministers who had refused to show up for questioning several times and lodged legal complaints to stall the probe. Okay, some politicians have challenged Bitar in court, accusing him of violating the Constitution or of showing bias. There were also reports of threats leveled against the judge, and the government vowed in 2021 to increase his security. All right, well, that could happen either way, whether this has to do with like Hezbollah or if this really was just an accident. People obviously don't want to go to jail. But anyway, let's skip down, and this is an interesting thing. So Bitar has been the subject of harsh criticism by Lebanon's powerful Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah. Nasrallah called Bitar's investigation a big mistake. Why? Why is it a big mistake? Why? Isn't that what you do when there's an accident? It was just an accident, right? Hezbollah, it was just an accident. And said it was biased. He asked authorities to remove Bitar. Can you believe this? The leader of a terrorist organization is demanding that legitimate leaders of the country be removed from a judge who's investigating an explosion. That doesn't look suspicious at all. Not one bit. Bitar is the second judge to take the case. The first judge, Fadi Sawan, was forced out after complaints of bias by 2 cabinet ministers. I wonder if those cabinet ministers are being pressured or in cahoots with Hezbollah. If the same happens to Bitar, it could be the final blow to the investigation. Well, okay, so this was written again January of this year. Let's fast forward to June 13th, which was almost exactly a month ago. London court orders UK registered firm to pay nearly $1 million to Beirut blast victims. This is in Reuters. A London court has ordered a British registered company to pay more than £800,000, or about $1 million, in damages to victims of the 2020 blast in Beirut's port, a lawyers group in Lebanon said on Monday, in the first such verdict over the explosion. We are now 3 years after that happened, and this is the first such verdict. This is the first, from what I can tell, and from my research, the only consequences that have come out of this legally. Remember when we were quoting that one guy in one of the earlier articles, and he's like, we're going to find who's to blame and they're going to pay? Well, so far, it's the United Kingdom that's making anybody pay. And $1 million, relatively speaking, to such an event and other events, doesn't seem like very much. More than 220 people were killed in the August 4th, 2020 blast when a huge shipment of ammonium nitrate fertilizer. Well, that's not what these guys said. They didn't say it was fertilizer. They said that it was specifically made. Here, let's see if I can find it again. Yeah, so it is specifically designed to be used as an oxidizer in blasting agents. I trust them. I trust them. I don't know. I don't know why they would lie about that. But you have these three, or these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 professionals in their respective fields that did this investigation, and what they came up with, it wasn't fertilizer. It wasn't for fertilizer. So the ammonium nitrate fertilizer, quote unquote, that had been sold by British registered firm Savaro Ltd. exploded. So this is getting even more weird. So if we were to believe the pictures, the pictures would suggest that those bags came from Brazil, that they're manufactured there, which doesn't mean that it can't. There's not retail. Again, I don't know how international trade works, but now we're talking about a company in the UK that had its hand in this. It's so weird. It's so weird. On January 31st, the High Court in London found Savaro Ltd. liable for death, personal injury, and property damage in a case brought by the Beirut Bar Association on behalf of blast victims. On Monday, the court ordered Savaro to pay £100,000 plus interest each to 3 relatives of deceased victims, and slightly over £500 to a wounded woman, according to a statement by the association. Reuters was unable to find contact details for Savaro or for its listed director. Quote, it's the first time that any court anywhere renders decision as to the liability and damages in the Beirut port explosion after approximately 3 years, said Camille Abu Slayman, a lawyer from legal firm Dechert, who was overseeing the case for victims and their families for free. All right, so it's like pro bono. She continues. It's the first ray of hope in the long march to justice and closure for the victims, Abu Slayman told Reuters. Later on, it says Lebanon's own probe into the blast has sputtered out. Oh, since January, as of January, it was ongoing. Now it's sputtered out 6 months later, or 5 months later. Earlier this year, investigating judge Tarek Bitar, that's the guy that we were just talking about in the last article, was charged with usurping powers after he filed his own charges against top security and political officials over the explosion. Yeah, those two generals, right? They were both generals, weren't they? Let me just remind myself. Yeah, two major generals. Major General Abbas Ibrahim and Major General Tony Saliba. So earlier this year, investigating judge Tarek Bitar was charged himself with usurping powers after he filed his own charges against top security and political officials over the explosion. Interesting how that works. So a judge is charging someone, it's like, no, you're being charged. Okay, said Paul Nagyar, whose daughter Alexandra was killed by the blast and who is one of the claimants. Quote, everything that is moving forward is outside of the country. It shows you how much they've obstructed things in Lebanon. It was really good to hear this news because it's progress. So that's it. The latest information that I have is that the investigation in Lebanon has essentially stopped because the first judge seems to have been pressured out, and now the second judge, that seems to have been just doing his job, has now been charged for doing his job in a quote-unquote unbiased way. That doesn't reek at all of corruption or trying to hide something, does it? And all the while, Hezbollah is like, bias. So, I don't know. There could be any number of explanations as to what happened. There could be other actors that I'm not considering. It could be a much more complex situation, but different groups that we've talked about here are Russia, Moldova, Georgia, the UK, Brazil, I guess, Lebanon, of course, Hezbollah. Now, I think I've heard before people suggest that maybe this was an operation of the Israeli Mossad or other intelligence agencies or groups in Israel that, you know, they knew about this large cache or this large amount of ammonium nitrate being stored in the Lebanese port. And so they decided to set it off there before it ended up coming to Israel. And I don't know, and I don't suspect that we would know that until the millennium when all things are revealed. But so I guess the possibilities are it was genuinely an accident as the result of a careless welder that set fireworks on fire next to the ammonium nitrate. So maybe it's a surface value type thing, or something that the Israelis did as like a what do they call it? A preemptive strike, essentially. Or it could have been something else. I mean, you know, put what you think below. I'm sure that a lot of you have already heard this talked about on other YouTube channels and other platforms and stuff like that. So there's probably a wide variety of explanations. But the fact of the matter is that it did happen, and I would take this as a sign of the times. When you have something comparable to a nuclear bomb going off in a major city, that's probably a sign. It's probably a sign, especially when it's happening in a year like 2020, in a month like August of 2020. Largest wildfires in Colorado, in California. A powerful Midwest derecho, which happened to be the costliest thunderstorm disaster in the United States history. And then just everything else that happened that year. It should be a warning to all of us of the times that we're in right now. Alright, well that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.